All right, everyone. Welcome. We have another one of our animator interviews, and today we have Ms. Kelly Schiesswohl. How are you doing?
Hi everyone. I'm doing well. Excited to talk to you all.
Great. I first start off, where do you think my students might have seen some of your work?
At this point, I
Sure, why not?
think my work has been in some festivals across the world. So if there are
Right.
any festival heads in here, that even in, I think most recently it was featured in the Pictoplasma Design Conference in
Okay.
Germany and New York, which was very exciting. But if you're in the YouTube and internet scene, through Short of the Week on their YouTube
Okay.
channel, it's been there for, I think, 2 years.
Nice.
So typically, that's where people have found my work, or
Okay.
I participate in some larger organizations like Television, Frog Farm, which is New York specific, and then Maltadult, which is also intra-US. So you may have seen me there.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so the first question I usually kind of ask my people I'm interviewing, where does your love of animation or motion, or you can even say character design, I don't know how you want to define it, but where does that come from for you?
Well, I think my pathway into animation started with dance.
Okay.
My mom is a dancer and was a professional dancer, and so I grew up dancing, and being in the like performing in theater space
Okay.
until high school. And some of your students may laugh or like think it's cringy, but I was a younger teenager when Steven Universe was coming out, and
Okay.
not that I necessarily was attracted to the style of that show, but seeing one show encapsulate music, theater, dance, and
Okay.
drawing all in one, that's what really explained to me that animation is where all of my hobbies and talents and things, I can put them all together in one place and not have to choose one. Because
Right.
when I was in high school, the question was, do you go like a math and science route? Do you go theater
Right.
route? Or do you go into
Sure.
visual art? And animation seemed like a place where all of those things work together in a way that felt exciting to me, new but also familiar. And
Okay.
that's what got me into that pathway, other than just growing up watching cartoons and
Right.
loving that as an art form. But I think it was that moment where it felt like, oh, okay, this is where I can put all my different facets into one place and make something with it.
Right. You and I talked really briefly about this, but I also interviewed another person who is she would call herself a comedian, actress. And yeah, although is not animator in the sense of like she draws, she does work with animators with the concepts of theater and expression and kind of the I mean, I've always kind of, when I talk about animation with my students, I always say like animation is always about over expression of everything. When I
Mhm.
was a kid in the 80s, for some reason, my elementary school had like pantomime as like something we were required. Don't ask me why. I don't know why my school required that you take pantomime and like theater, but we did. And every time I think about like animation, I always think about like this the over exaggeration of movement, whether you want to call that, acting or dance or whatever, but it's like that kind of like you always try to like, sh as I sort of joke with my students, it's like if I'm drinking a coffee in real life, I drink it like that because that's how
Mhm.
real people drink coffee. But if this was an animation, I'd be like, putting my, in a way
Mhm.
that no one really does that, but you do it because you're expressing in the way that, actors and actresses in a stage would like present themselves to the audience. It's that same
Exactly.
kind of idea, So yeah, there's definitely a lot of like theater elements, I would say for sure in animation and all, and you go back and like look at old Warner Brothers, and there's a lot of that of even the concept of staging is really a theater concept that it gets applied to animation. So you're interested in Steven Universe and this idea of like combining all these artistic elements together, like dance and music and such. Where does that take you?
Well, I went to Pratt to study 2D animation in their digital arts department. And I hope this is encouraging to your students because when I went to school for animation, I didn't know anything. I
Okay.
used to joke with some of my friends that there are two types of kids in that program, the kids who came out of the womb with a pencil and the
Right.
kids who didn't. I did not know early on that animation was what I wanted to do. It came pretty late in the game. Like it was a real game time decision to choose animation and go to Pratt in general. So it's really never too late uh, to get into that. And I think
Mm.
it's really all the things that lead you to animation,
Mhm.
less of you need to be animating before you get to that your program or your chosen school. So, I've come a long way since then, but when I started, I had never used Adobe. I had never used a Cintiq before. I didn't even have my own laptop until
Mhm.
well into undergrad. So, I hope that's encouraging or comforting
Sure.
to those who are animation curious that it's okay if you go in not knowing anything and if you're
Sure.
really betting on yourself and taking a risk. I think that
Mhm.
is maybe the lesson to learn there is take that risk, bet on
Sure.
yourself. Because I really do believe that that pays off. Like trust your gut.
Mhm.
Um, and so I worked all through college. And this is kind of funny. I felt a little bit like under the radar when I was in school because I really was struggling and like working hard to figure it out and to make up for lost time, things like that. So when I finished my first film, my graduation film,
Right.
I felt like there was a lot of pushback while I was making the film that people just didn't really understand what I was going for and
Okay.
why I made a film called Trichotillomania that is about the condition where you pull out your hair. I have it
Okay.
and it affects my eyebrows and
Oh,
it's
okay.
kind of weird and funny and it's something that other people could see about me without even me having to share it. And so I thought, okay, my first film should really be something that's so me that nobody else could make it.
Right.
And that's why I chose that topic because it's something that people could see on my face, whether I liked it or not.
Right. Right.
And I chose to make it a comedy, less so like set up punchline, but just I'm a funny person, less because I
Mhm.
make jokes and more because I'm a bit strange. And so I
Sorry. Yeah.
thought, all right, how do I turn that personality and this topic into a movie? And it
Mhm.
went through so many iterations. Shouts out to the seven animatics, the seven like planning attempts that I made
Sure.
to figure out what that film would be like. Um, all the way through. So I finally finished it at Pratt. It takes about a year and a half to make a 4-minute movie. And I submitted that. And again, there was people really not, the faculty was not hot on it until the bitter
Oh,
end where I got like an award for the movie, which was really awesome and exciting. It definitely gave me like a boost of wind in my sails. But my biggest advice to all students is finish that movie. Me finishing Trichotillomania, as many errors and flaws and whatever that's going on in that movie that I can see now,
right.
um, finishing that movie changed my life because when I got out of the doors of Pratt and said goodbye,
Right.
what I basically did was I would reach out, cold email
Right.
everyone. I would email like EPs of production companies to ask about, what it's like to be that. And I would send them my film. I would say like two sentences. My name is Kelly Schiesswohl. I just graduated from Pratt Institute. The work
Mhm.
that best speaks to who I am and what I do is
Okay.
blank, is
Yes.
trichotillomania.
Right.
And you wouldn't believe how well that worked. I think people just want to see it. They don't want to be
Right.
told what you are. They just want to
Yeah. Yeah.
see it.
Well, for
And
artists, it's always about the portfolio.
mhm,
Can you show me what you do? I mean, as much as any artist can try to explain what they do, I think, as the old saying goes, a picture's worth a thousand words, or in this case, the
yes.
animation is worth a thousand words versus whatever you
Mhm.
can say. So they'll look at it and go, oh, okay, this person has this style, or at least this person understands timing or very, the principles of animation, whatever they're looking for. I think that, yeah, I think what you're saying is a great point of like it's a good way to market yourself and show what you are and what you can do.
Mhm. And so that really, well, and also people see that and they either like you or they don't. And that's
Right, right.
okay. There were a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
people who saw that movie who were like, what is this? And that's
Right.
totally fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I think if anything, work that at least generates some sort of conversation of ew or yay, uh, that's a good thing. I think it's okay that people are really into what I do or really don't understand. I'll never forget this when the film got posted on YouTube.
Hmm.
One of the best comments that I got was, I don't really see why this needed to be made, but good effort. It's like, that's awesome. Thank you.
Right,
Like it didn't have to be made, but I wanted to. And
right. Yeah.
so, you'll get some crazy YouTube comments are
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best place to see like every opinion under the sun and
Right.
that
Right.
that's okay. So I will say that was part of it, and the other part that sort of propelled me into where I'm at now, I guess there's maybe three things. Finishing the film,
Hmm.
I knew that I had something, some sort
Okay.
of ball of goodness that needed to keep getting refined. And some mentors were kind enough to say that to me. They were like, "You're on a roll, keep going." So I applied to Hunter College, which is
Okay.
a
Yeah,
city
yeah.
school in New York.
My
Um,
mom taught there.
oh, it's awesome. I mean, I think it's great to go to a fancy school if you can help it at one point, but I really assure my students that, it's okay to just choose the place that helps you get what you need. I knew
Exactly.
that I wanted to teach. I come from a long generation of teachers. I love my job as a teacher. It helps me reinforce what I've learned. It helps
Sure,
me learn from the students who have so much to say and so much
sure.
to share. It's really a beautiful job. So I knew I wanted to do that, which requires a higher degree. That's fine.
Right.
I knew I wanted to make another movie. Um, so I applied to grad school and that was sort of cooking. And all during that time, I was working to save up for that as a producer. So for those who don't know what that is, there is a creative side to making projects. You've got your designers, your animators, your directors, but then there's a more logistics and business side, which are typically, for at least short form and commercials, your producers who act as the midpoint between what the client wants and what the artist and team can provide. And
Sure.
so I joke about that job was tough because everyone's always mad at you. The clients want things faster and for
Right.
less
Yeah.
money, and the artists want more
Right.
time and more
More
money.
money. Yeah, of course.
But what was really exciting about being a producer is I got to learn all about the business of how stuff gets made.
Sure.
And I did that for 3, 4 years. I saved up a bunch of money and I was able to put that into my schooling and also into, like, I wasn't spending my creative juice. So that's when I got involved in community efforts like Hellovision.
Okay.
Absolutely. Big shouts out to Michael and Peter who started Hellovision, which is like a animation variety show. They put
Oh,
out
nice.
a theme twice a year and you get 1 month to, as they say, cut as many corners as possible, dream big, make
Okay.
something crazy, whether you know how to animate or not, it's open to everyone and nobody is rejected. It's
Okay.
just a place for people to give it a shot. And
Okay.
usually it
That's
ends up
cool.
being kind of funny and like
Right,
fun to
right.
watch, but it's grown exponentially ever since, since when I started. Now they have showings of television episodes all over the world, all over the
Oh, nice.
country.
Very cool.
There's hundreds of people who participate, so I definitely encourage students who are new to animation. If you want to get screened somewhere for the first time, television is a great first step.
Hmm.
Um, so I was doing that while I was working and doing school, and also getting into the festival scene with my first movie, which lasted for about 3, 4 years. I think it played for the last time at the Nighthawk, a local theater, a couple months ago. So back in
Hmm.
2025. So you'd be surprised. These things tend to they can really pick up some speed and roll for a long time. So your movies can really go far and do a lot. which is why I think like finish your projects, get them out there. You never know what's going to happen.
Sure.
Um, so the producing really helped me be able to fund and go to school, make another movie, which I just finished in the spring. That's like three times the length. It's 15 minutes long.
Hmm.
A horror short, like a new
Okay.
genre for me. I used grad school as an opportunity to, inside of that sort of incubator, just try something I would probably never normally do out in the working world, make a
Hmm.
really long film and
Sure.
try a new genre. So I really encourage while students are in school to really take a risk
Sure.
because, when you're working, I know that I'll always be able to make 4-minute films. I know that I've
Yeah.
done it before. So that was my ceiling previously. And I wanted to
You wanted
just
to
see
push
where,
yourself, and yeah.
yeah, see where the new ceiling is. You can always walk it back from there.
Sure.
So that, and through grad school was how I got my first opportunity to teach, which
Mhm.
Hunter has a program where you can do it uh, for like within their undergraduate
Sure. Sure.
class. So I did that and I've been gaining experience ever since. I love it and I like teaching because I get to stay up to date on the craft and
Sure.
really uh, keep engaged with what's new, what's going on. And the schools are incentivized to have you be impressive. So I keep making
Right.
work, I travel, I speak, I do things um and the school is happy to cheer that on and support
Mhm.
that because they want
Right.
faculty who are sharp and engaged and can
Right.
bring that right back into the classroom. So I found a nice little ecosystem for myself out here in New York, balancing those two worlds. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, is planning out the festival scene for the new film and figuring out what's next, what's on the horizon. Is it a film? Is it comics? There's a
Mhm.
lot kind of cooking and going on. So that's my general arc from about 2017 to now.
Okay. What do you, so for some of my students who maybe haven't done a longer piece, I mean, at least in my class, I usually, their final is about 30 seconds, and I don't know about other teachers, but I doubt they're more than a minute. Um, what do you say, you talked a little bit about sort of like learning from I'm a huge proponent of learning by doing. And I think you kind of touched on that a little bit. What do you think you learned by doing your first 4-minute piece in at Pratt that maybe you wouldn't have, what do you feel like you learned from that? And how did you apply that to maybe like what the next one that you did or some other projects that you did?
The thing that I learned, there are some really obvious things. I think I learned never start with your first shot, the shot that appears first in the movie.
Right,
That
right.
I think is funny advice because you get exponentially better as you go through the process of making something. And they say you never want to start with your first shot because you'll just be bummed when you look at it every time because it'll be the worst one, air quotes.
Right,
Not that
right.
it would be that bad, but I thought that was funny. And I forgot that when I made my longer film. But because it's longer, it's more obvious the disparity.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, got to keep that in mind. But I think partially, it's a general learning where I learned that I can do it. With the support of the faculty and the other students, I learned that I can do it. I learned the importance of organization.
Mhm.
Um, I took a personal finance class at Pratt my senior
Sure,
year, and the best thing that that taught me was how to use Google Sheets to be a producer and to make short
sure,
films. So
sure.
don't necessarily use it for my expenses per se, but I love it for movie making and for organization to really be diligent about backing things up, being
Mhm.
organized, where things are going, gather all
Right,
dependencies when you're working in After Effects, that kind of thing.
right.
I also, not necessarily through my first film, but through my second film, I really dealt with a lot of self-doubt and more
Okay.
like mental struggle per se than can I actually animate. And what I learned was that I think self-confidence has a transitive property. So if you
Okay.
feel self-conscious as an artist, which many of us do, I'm
Sure.
not good enough, I found that there's two-pronged approach to working on that. Part of it was very, very clear self-talk of looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I can do this. I've done it once. I can do it again. I have something to say. I believe in my
Mhm.
art. And the
Right.
other part was finding another place in your life where you can make concrete progress. So for me, that was more athletics. I was not an athlete in school, but I am now as an adult. I run, I bike, I swim. And
Mm,
there was something about seeing growth in myself in any sense every week
mm,
that I really do believe that trick the cup overflows and it falls into other cups, and it really helped me believe in myself every day. I would like take a cold shower every morning,
okay.
just start the day off with something difficult, get it out of the way, kick its ass, and then you'd be surprised. You feel like, wow, I can very subconsciously, I can do that. That hard thing that I have to do, that shot I have to do today,
Right.
I can do that. I've already done something hard today. Momentum is
Sure.
huge, especially with filmmaking where it's such a marathon. Any little momentum that you can build up, self-confidence, doing shots that make you excited, and pairing
Mm,
that with harder ones, or knowing yourself. I'm the kind of person where I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and attack the hardest thing first thing in the day because my
okay.
brain is nice and sharp. And then you do more fun stuff for the rest of the day, figuring out what your sort of daily flow is and
Right.
respecting that. It's okay that it can be different from person to person. It's about who you are and what works for you. And those are some things that I have picked up. But I really encourage myself and my students to always be living dynamically, do other things that make you feel good
Mm,
about yourself, because that will influence your artwork and will
mm.
strengthen your sense of self as it relates to your art too.
Yeah, no, I think these are all good points. Like I like your idea of sort of attacking or, finding your own flow, not being, doing things that get you motivated. For you, it sounds like a cold shower and maybe the shock or the getting over the dread of something and then kind of using that as like, okay, the rest of the day I'm now focused. I got the worst. It's sort of like getting the shot, right? Like when
Hmm.
most of the pain of a shot is the fear of it as opposed to like the literal getting the shot of it. So once it's done, it's like, okay, now let's just move
Hmm.
forward kind of situation. So yeah, I think and then that's all kind of interesting. How do you think your first project affected your second one, the one that you just completed? Like, what do you think you applied from the first one to this one?
There are good things and there are bad things. I think that my first project doing more than I thought it would by way of getting out there. I think
Hmm.
I put a lot of pressure on myself for the second one because you can get it in your head that, well, I'm known for this and this
Right.
worked, so I have
Right.
to do this again. And I really would say that something I learned between these two films is
Mhm.
it's not the drawings per se. I think what I noticed about my film that attracted people was the way that the story is told.
Sure.
The different techniques, how creative it was in visualizing certain feelings, things that are immaterial.
Mm.
And I really tried to hold that in the forefront of my mind for the next piece, to let the content of the film determine the style, the colors, the approach,
Mm.
but to remember that what makes this film a me film is the story and the way that it's told, the unique way that I invite people into the world, the tone.
Right,
Um,
right.
I'm not necessarily a comedian, but I think the films end up being funny because of how
Mm.
strange they are, or how awkward they are at certain moments, how stilted the characters behave.
Right,
Um,
right.
that sort of became my discovery about, okay, this is what people are responding to about my work, not necessarily that my characters have pink skin and crazy
Right,
facial
right.
expressions or whatever, right? That was a helpful thing to remember, that you don't have to pigeonhole yourself so early
Sure.
on, that there's something immaterial about your work that is inevitably what people will keep coming back for. It's the you in the piece.
Mm.
Don't worry about the visuals so early on. Just
Sure.
make a lot of work. And the essence will bubble to the top, I think. So that I learned that from my first film, that you know what, just because the going is good doesn't mean
Mm.
to just keep doing the same thing.
Right.
To really ask, why is this thing working? Why is it working for me? Why is it working for others? And
Sure.
to pay more attention to the essence of the thing than necessarily. A lot of my students get very obsessed with my style, what's my
Right.
style? And I try to discourage that early on because I think exploration and risk taking are the most important things to really front load early
Sure.
on. You've got all your life to sort of think
Right.
about things retrospectively, but
Sure.
at the beginning, just make as much sort of self-exploratory work as possible, really push your boundaries because that's where the good stuff will come from.
Mhm.
Um, and I've had a lot of mentors who really demonstrate that. Somebody who's not an animator per se, but who I study often is this guy, Roman Moradov,
Okay.
who is more of a comics artist. He's a good friend. He's also the lead designer for Notion.
Oh, okay.
So all of the characters and the even the little AI symbol that they created, that's all Roman's work. But
Mhm.
his personal work is really a gold mine of boundary pushing,
Right.
narrative illustration, and drawing in comics. And I learn a lot from him. Also, I would say to myself and students to look at other art forms before you look at other animation for inspiration. To really, I look at quilts a lot. I look at
Okay.
like embroidered and fabric storytelling,
Mhm.
like textile work.
Right. Yeah.
Um, just because I like folk art a lot and I find a lot of inspiration from outsider art, folk art,
Mhm.
people who are outside of like institutional knowledge, I guess,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
the work feels a little bit more pure. I don't identify as the most technically skilled animator. And so someone told me very early on, this is like sad, but also important. It was the hardest thing that I was ever told. They said, I've been rejected. This was pandemic. I was rejected from like every internship I applied to, all studios. And I was really not sure what to do.
Mhm.
And a teacher told me that I was not good enough to work in animation studios. So I either had to get better at animation or figure out what it is that I'm good at and
Mhm.
and provide that to people. And that was a really interesting fork in the road for me where I felt like my passion is not in animating other people's stuff.
Sure.
It's in figuring out what I do that other people cannot and sharing that with the world. And that was before I started production on the thesis film. And I think that really kicked me in a different and very important direction. Neither of those choices is better than the other. It's
Sure.
just a choice that you are able to make. And I could always change that down the line. That's okay too. But I think that that really resonated with me in that moment, as hard as it was to hear, you're not what you
Right.
think you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was important, an important moment. So it helps me get my priorities straight and really put my efforts in specific spots instead of being spread too thin to where I wasn't able to succeed anywhere. Um, so I hope that I worded that correctly, not in a scary way.
Right.
That
Right.
doesn't have to be a scary conversation.
Yeah. What would you say? So, a lot of my students, they've maybe taken one animation course, maybe in the middle of the first animation course or whatever. Let's say you have a student like one of mine who would be like, hey, I really find this interesting. I don't know if I don't know if I want to do this as a career, but I'm interested in kind of moving forward or getting better. What would your advice be to that person?
Hmm. There's a couple different layers to that. If you want to improve your skill as an animator, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Obviously, with the internet now, there are plenty of resources that are
Sure.
free and available. I often, for my students at Hunter who are in a similar position, very, very new, who
Sure.
want that technical know-how, but without going to an animation program, I always send them to two people,
Okay.
Alex Grigg and Ben Marriott. So Ben Marriott falls more on the compositing side of things, and Alex Grigg who was adopted by Procreate to help create Procreate Dreams. He's
Oh,
in he's in love with teaching people the fundamentals of hand-drawn animation. So those are two resources online that are primarily free and just out there
right.
that I would encourage if you want to learn fundamentals, squash and stretch,
Right.
anticipation. these very classic techniques definitely going in that direction. But I also think there's potentially another route you could go entirely, which is to really get involved in the short film universe and to
Hmm.
start finding maybe lesser known artists or people who are just off the beaten path of studio animation, if that's something that interests you, and to
Sure.
start thinking about form and function, the way things are made, think about process, like taking a more experimental approach where you're examining not just how to move a body, but
Right.
what tools that you're using, the materials, the process. Experimental animation is kind of defined by that. The process is part of the art itself, not just the product.
Hmm.
So that might be a really formative methodology to use early on if that's something that interests a given artist. I was lucky enough at Pratt to be taught by, truthfully, like a fleet of really amazing women who all have such unique styles, who came from more of the Cal Arts experimental
Right,
sort of
right.
chapter of animation, who are very talented animators, but also really cared about process and how you're coming to the visuals that you're creating. So I was given a good both sides, and I've definitely leaned more towards using an experimental philosophy to create narrative work. Um,
Okay.
that I think has helped me cultivate a filmmaking style that's unique to myself. And so that's usually where I would put my students, is to look at some of the more technical resources available online if you are self-contained in that way. Also, plenty of animators that I know offer mentorship, whether it's low cost or like free mentorship. Even if you just reach out, ask people questions. I have been tremendously supported by just the generosity of independent artists, who want to help, who want to
Right.
help for free, who offer pathways to get involved with them, who offer like working opportunities to teach you things. There's so many different ways to do it. My teacher, Amanda Bonaiuto, who is a colleague of mine now, we work together now, which is so exciting. She was always this North Star of generosity, of
Mhm.
telling me how she did what she did,
Right.
talking to me about what would work for me. Like, what is the Kelly solution to this problem, not the Amanda solution? Like, that finding mentors who want to help you be as you as possible and not just give you a blanket answer,
Right.
that's huge. I mean, it's like life changing to have people in your corner who really understand you and want to help you find that within yourself. That is super helpful. And Amanda, among many others, she's just been one of the most generous people as it relates to knowledge and opportunity and experience. Um, that I will thank her forever for the support that she and some of my other professors have really altruistically just given out because they want to see artists succeed because there's room for everyone. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I really hold that close to my heart as a teacher now, that there's room for everyone. And my job as a teacher is to help my students discover who they are, not for them to be like mini me's, if that makes any
Right, right.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, for students who want to push their education past where they're at, exploring the free resources at your disposal and just making work,
Hmm.
turning off the self-critical. You don't have to show anyone per se early on, but generate a lot of work and don't think too hard about it, because you're really going to start to uncover in the volume of stuff the real like bright shining stars that you want to keep devoting more attention to. Um,
Right.
that really, like, be your own biggest cheerleader. The artists that I know who have succeeded really are that, believe in their own work more than anyone else and just believe
Sure.
in their capacity to grow. Another person who went to Pratt who would be a great person to interview is Chris Rutledge.
Okay.
Um, he's like known as the king of Houdini at this point. He
Okay.
was like a very early adopter and now
Yeah, yeah.
works
I
with
know
side
Houdini.
effects.
I used to be a motion graphic artist, so yeah, yeah, I'm aware.
Oh, 100%. And he's a huge fan of Blender, Houdini,
Right,
3D
right.
work, and the idea of pushing 3D animation past CGI into
Right.
being its own creative, expressive, experimental art. So he was somebody who's always been very helpful and supportive of my
Oh,
work.
okay.
Um, and has helped me connect with Multidult and Television
Right.
and
Oh, nice.
he's just been a good. So finding the people who are on your bandwagon is another great way to just protect yourself and to help
Right.
progress your art. Really speak to people and speak from the heart. They say that like to ask someone for a job is not the way that you get a job. You get a job by just making friendships and making genuine connections. And
Right.
that will pay dividends way more than just asking someone for work. Um, and as paradoxical as that is and hard to explain, it really has been that way in my experience. It's just my genuine desire to learn about other people and to make friends
Right.
is what's helped me find my path and
Yeah, yeah.
try new things
Sure.
and get jobs and succeed and fail and all these things. Um, so those are my sort of main tenets for what do I do now? I like animation. What next? Make
Right.
more work, make more friends, and
Right.
to always be a student of the world, to always be curious about what's out there.
Last question I kind of want to give you. I always ask this question, and there's a lot of ways you can take this question. It can be the industry or methods of making animation or whatever. Where do you see animation going in maybe 10, 20 years? And then you can take it, you can, come at that however you want to come at that. Uh,
I love this question. I think about this from an education standpoint all the time because oftentimes it's students asking, what's going to happen, Kelly? What
right,
should I be scared? And my thoughts now, based on the technology at hand, you can all probably guess what I'm referring to.
right,
Um, I I really do believe that though AI and generated work, it threatens the industry in one particular way. Coming from the ad space, I found that working in commercials that companies are very interested in making work that feels like it was made by a person because
right,
ultimately that is what persuades. People persuade other people, not
right.
funky slogans or ad campaigns or whatever. That's the whole advent of the micro influencer, right? That
Sure, yeah.
now influencers are out, but micro influencers who feel like real people, they're in. And I just knowing all this stuff, I think my view of the industry is that with technology that will generate more work, but work that feels inherently divided from humanity, I weirdly believe that there's going to be this renaissance of the artist, the
Mhm.
who behind the what, the
Right,
why behind the what. People are going to be more curious about how things are made, who is making them, their background, and how they got into making stuff, why they're making stuff. Um, and so I really encourage my students, and I believe this in my own practice, that I want to make honest and authentic work that speaks to the life that I've lived, that translates to people the idea of how I see the world. That's what art is for. It's the
right.
opportunity for people to see through someone else's eyes and maybe learn something from that, or maybe expand their own perspective, or challenge their perspective, or even reinforce it. So with the advent of generative work and how much that stresses me out on a labor level of just jobs that are able to be done by people, I have a feeling that this weird boomerang thing will come around to where almost the same way that people are really into records now and this like analog feeling of work. You even see it in animation where everybody wants to put paper textures on digital animation and make it
Right,
look like it's on the CRT, stuff like that,
right,
right?
right.
These compositing trends, I feel like that is going to progress and progress and progress to the point where, in some way, the industry will fracture, where, there will be the workhorse side of things that just wants to generate stuff, and the
Mm,
other side of things where businesses, people, commissioners, clients are really interested in the who behind the work. And people who can articulate their background and their story and their why
sure.
animation really well. And so I try to work hard with myself and my students to always be in touch with that personal philosophy, almost like your artist statement, to
Right.
always be asking yourself, what is that for me right now? It will change. It'll change a lot. That's fine. But I believe that someday soon, maybe in the next 5, 10 years, that there will be a side of the industry that is very concerned with the artists themselves and who is making the stuff that we are consuming, because we as people want to feel connected to them. It's not necessarily the thing, it's our way of finding connection through these things, through film, TV, art, media, music. It's about feeling something, and
Right.
people make us feel something. So that I would encourage your students to really like embrace the humanity of making stuff, and the very real like human body behind the product. Not even product, screw that, behind the art, right? Um, because I believe that that will become very valuable very soon, especially if you're pursuing making art, sort of on, like posting online, like just trying to build your own audience. The people care less about the things and more about you and the fact that you are making that stuff. And so, really, as an artist, you're selling yourself, your why, your who.
Right.
I think that that is how I am coping with the changing of the landscape right now, is to really invest my resources in being an interesting person with stuff to say and saying it as much as I can to as many people as I can.
I mean, we are at a point. I could go on for a whole thing about AI, but I have one thing that I'm very notice, and I think it's good for us as humans, is like, I'm going to talk about a different area of creativity, like books.
Mhm.
There's a reason. I mean, not that, there's some novelty to like this is an AI generated book, or literally from the I need to produce 10,000 words as quick as possible to sell for
Right.
2 second or for 2 cents. But you'll notice that like, I keep tabs on different areas that like no AI generated book has done outside of like the novelty that this has been generated by AI. No one's like, oh my God, this book is so great. It's a New York, you know what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
because, and that says to me, it's like, I haven't read any of these AI generated books, but like, there's sort of the uncanny valley, which is like, we don't like things, it's why robots that look too human freak us out. It's like, they look like human, but they don't have the, soul or essence or whatever you want to say of a human, and that bothers us. And I think,
Mhm.
as someone who, when we read AI stuff, we go, wait, this is AI. And then suddenly it doesn't feel as we kind of go, wait, this isn't how humans would talk, or you know what I mean? And it feels like there's this uncanny valley a little bit. So, like you said, like I think there's always going to be a place for humans doing human things and stories that humans understand. And as much as you can try to write an algorithm that literally copies and pastes the formula of what a story is, it's never going to quite have that human essence because it's not. It's just a bunch of random generate, I mean, it's literally like as someone who programs, it's like you're just literally choosing random numbers to go this. There's no essence of like how point A gets to point B to point C the way a
Right.
human would tell a story. So it's always gonna, and I don't see, real AI coming around anytime soon. So it's like you're always gonna have, it's never gonna have that real feeling. And humans want that. We want that human connection, even if it's through a book as maybe it's not even if the human connection isn't coming from a physical conversation or even something like this, but at least we don't want it to just feel like, oh, this is just, so that's my feeling on it. So yeah, I think you and I kind of have similar thoughts there.
Yeah, and I hope that that is encouraging in some way, because I know that my students feel an amount of dread and despair and confusion about where to position themselves in the
Right,
industry in the future. And so we just try to focus on what we can control, and also to some extent focusing on the labor organization efforts that are happening across the industry,
right,
um, to investigate what that means, especially if you end
right.
up in a studio setup,
Sure.
to be supportive of collective action, to protect the rights of the artists themselves and the people who work really hard to make these big beautiful things that we like. So I think that that's another side of it. That's a whole different topic, but I encourage your students to explore that if that's interesting to them or if they go down that path. Um, that's another side of action where people are considering these issues outside of
Right.
just conversations between you and me and people to people. So I believe that there is hope. And I hope that if anything, that what your class gains from this conversation is that there's no one way to do this career.
Sure.
There are many, many, many ways, and I hope that that makes you feel like the path is wide open and not dark and scary and too narrow. So there is hope, there is possibility, there are plenty of options. There's no right way to do it. There's just the way that you can do it. And, you know, I am always here to talk to students and to share things. I know that you are. So I hope that they feel supported. You're not alone in this industry. The rising tide raises all ships. So, us all working hard independently helps all of us. So that's mine.
I think that's a nice place to kind of end our conversation here on a nice uplifting note. If my students want to see any of your work or get in touch with you, what's a good way for them to reach out to you or see your work?
Well, I communicate with a lot of community members and things like that on Instagram. So I'll
Okay.
share with you that information. And
Okay.
then there's always the opportunity to email or contact me via email through my website. I'm a teacher, so I'm in that email daily. So
Sure.
there's no worries there. So yes, reach out anytime for anything at all. I love talking all things cartoons, life, art, how to be a person, all
Sure.
the good stuff.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.